London discovered. It was March and London was wrapped in fog, and once again I was looking for a job. No, first I had to find somewhere to stay, somewhere to live. A school friend from India, now working in a restaurant, put me up for 2 or 3 days in his cramped little bed sitting room. From there, I moved to a student hostel, international, very noisy with parties going on night and day, and very little sign of academic activities. I was a total misfit and I moved out in a hurry, having found a quiet and cheerful bed sitting room on Haverstock Hill. The room even had its own bathroom, a rarity in London, and the rent £2 per week included decent breakfast prepared by my kind Jewish landlady. I had lost no time in visiting the employment bureau. The officer in charge asked me what I could do, and I said I could type, write a letter, do a little accounting, and grow geraniums. There was a job for a park attendant, he told me, and it included outdoor work and cleaning up the litter left by the visitors. It sounded tempting. But when I looked out of the window and saw the cold rain pouring down, I thought an indoor job would be preferable. He looked through his index card and said there was a vacancy for a junior clerk in a firm called Fotex, but the salary was just £5, which was then the minimum weekly wage. I decided I'd give it a try and went along to Charlotte Street off Tottenham Court Road, where I found the showroom and office of Fotex, a small firm making photographic accessories. The senior clerk seemed friendly enough, and when he found I was literate and reasonably intelligent, he put me in his accounts section. I was a ledger clerk again, dull, monotonous work, but not very stressful, and I knew I would be able to devote my evenings to my literary endeavors. This was to be my fourth job in 2 years, and once again I looked upon it as another interval, or in fact my being on the way to becoming a full-time writer. But I would be with Fotex for 2 years. Jobs weren't easy to find in the port of England, and writers weren't earning much either. Meanwhile, the typescript of my novel, based on the journal I had first submitted, was lying with the publishing firm of Andre Duchot, whose editor, Diana Athill, had been so encouraging, and I was eager to see them as soon as I had settled into my room and my job. I lost no time in contacting Diana, and I was then invited to lunch with her and Andre, an author's lunch. This was a good sign. A publisher did not invite an author to lunch unless they planned to do business with them. We lunched at a pleasant little restaurant near the Great Russell Street office. Andre was a small, affable man who had escaped from Hitler's Germany just before the war. He had gone into publishing just 3 or 4 years ago, but he already had some successful writers on his list. Wolf Mankiewicz with a Kid for 2 Farthings, about to be filmed, and Mordecai Richler from Canada, and Waiting in the Wings were V.S. Naipaul and Jack Kerouac. Good writers were heading towards Andre Duchot instead of the bigger companies. Diana, by contrast, was a fairly tall woman, about my height, 5 feet 7 inches. She had a purposeful walk, auburn hair, clear-spoken English, no funny regional accent, a slim figure, and a persuasive manner. She was in her early 30s. Over the course of time, she was to become one of London's most respected editors and a writer of candid personal and literary memoirs. But at the time, she was relatively unknown, a junior partner with the firm. However, Andre relied on her when it came to discovering and publishing new authors. The lunch went well. Although I paid no attention to the food, I was anxious to hear what they had to say about my journal turned novel, the typescript of which had been with them for a couple of months. They complimented me on the book, told me it had been praised by the reader, none other than the distinguished writer Walter Allen, who opined that I was a disciple of Sterne. I had yet to read Lawrence Sterne, but that I should wait until I was older and more mature before rushing into publication. In spite of Allen's reservations, Andre was willing to take me on, provided I did some more work on the book. In other words, rewrite the whole thing. He offered me £25 for an option on the rights. I accepted. I was willing to work on that book again and again so long as it could be published someday. And I was richer by £25. Add this to my meager salary and I could afford going to the theatre occasionally and buying myself a new pair of shoes so that I could walk the streets of London in great comfort, for I was determined to discover the city on foot, as you could see practically nothing travelling on the Underground Railway. There was no one to share my good news with except my landlady, and she very kindly gave me a hot cup of cocoa to calm my nerves, but I needed something stronger. So I walked over to the best restaurant in Hampstead, ordered a martini, and treated myself to an expensive dinner. And later that week, I went to the theatre. London was still the home of the theatre world. Even the big Broadway shows came over to London sooner or later, and there were dozens of theatres and shows to choose from. The first big musical that I saw was Porgy and Bess, the all-black folk opera composed by George Gershwin. This had some talented singers and great songs. I am on my way, Summertime, I got plenty of nothing, It ain't necessarily so, Bess You is my woman now. Other musicals that came my way were Guys and Dolls, Paul Joey, Paint Your Wagon, but these were anemic compared to Porgy. These were weekend treats. Every evening after returning from work, I'd work on The Room on the Roof, for that was the title I had settled on, writing or rather rewriting a few pages before going out for a frugal supper at the nearest snack bar. And in that process, my 19th birthday passed in solitary splendor. No one would have known about it had not a couple of birthday cards arrived from my friends in distant Tehra, including one from Raj, the girl with whom I used to play badminton. I wondered if I would ever see them again. India seemed to be receding into a hazy distance. My landlady saw the cards in my room, said nothing, but presented me with a simple sponge cake that she had baked herself. Dear London landlady, I don't even remember your name, but I remember your kindness. Diana was kind to me too. She had me over for a meal occasionally, a wholesome English roast or a shepherd's pie. And we would take walks in Regent's Park and just across the road, exercising her pet Pekingese, Lychee. She shared her flat with a cousin Barbara, a young woman of formidable talents, who was to edit The Economist one day. Her fiancé was a writer called Anthony Smith, who traveled around the world in a balloon and wrote a book about it. She waited until he got back before she married him. Although Diana was some 15 years older than me, she seemed to like my company, and as we were both film buffs, we often accompanied each other to the cinema. She took me to see a number of memorable French films, La Ronde, Pepe le Moko, Les Vacances de Monsieur Hulot, to name a few, and I took her to a revival of Marx Brothers comedies at the old Everyman's Cinema in Hampstead. I also took her to an Indian restaurant, there were half a dozen of them in London at that time, and persuaded her to eat a pan after the meal. I hadn't seen pan for a couple of years and ordered it out of sheer nostalgia, but neither of us really enjoyed it and we did not repeat the experiment. Then came the coronation, and all of the London flocked to Westminster Abbey and lined the streets to watch the young queen roll by in her gilded coach to be crowned Elizabeth II of England, or rather Britain and the Commonwealth. Yes, the same queen who reigns today, 68 years on. The winter fog was over, but of course it was raining, and I spent the day in a local pub watching the event on television. TV sets were just beginning to appear in pubs and clubs, the fare being limited to football matches, ice skating extravaganzas, and public events such as the coronation. Radio still ruled the airwaves, and it was radio that gave me my first opening as a short story writer.